So first things first is if you press Q and you go under Mesh Tools, there's an option for dice. And recently we've been working on something called Dice 2D, where basically the dice will rescale itself in order to fit the mesh that's on screen or the selection. One of the improvements with this update is if you press Tab to expand the .ui, you see that an option for dissolve has now been added. In addition to dissolve being added, we also added the ability for sharps to be able to be preservative of the surface whenever using dissolve dice. To show this in action, I'm just going to select these three faces and we're just going to alt lock our view, and I'm just going to go into dice in edit mode, press V, and we'll press D in order to dissolve the original geometry. This means whenever we click it, the original geometry has been eradicated, which can give a really cool result, but isn't really optimal when it comes to these differential surface type situations. So let us select these three edges and we will just mark them. And from here, let's set up the same scenario again. So we just go under our dice, press V, we could press Tab, click on dissolve, and just by rolling up our number, we can just click and apply, and we see that it was capable of replacing the surface without replacing the area that was marked with sharp marking. So that is really the purpose of this update, was just to prevent that from happening, because alternatively it was just wiping it out, and there are certainly cases where you would definitely want an override in place in order to get those sort of things under control. So here we have it without sharp markings, and then when we dissolve and replace it, it just does a geometric replacement of everything that was once there before. Line dice has also seen some enhancements. So if we press Q, we can go under Mesh Tools and bring up dice, and by pressing V twice we can switch over to line dice. When we first released it, a user immediately pointed out that control should actually be snap, meaning that you could hold control and alt in order to snap between 2 points, and click, and do it again, and it just feels a lot more natural, a lot more Blender-like. We can also press W to turn on wireframe if needed. So here I'm using control to snap to this point. I'll hold alt, jump here, release alt, click, and just like that, we can now use angular snap inside of line dice a lot more fluidly than we could before with it being on shift. My apologies for that oversight. We should have spotted that. Previously, we also added the ability for view dice to be able to rotate. And one of the things that was a small oversight was the ability to press Tab to bring up the .ui, but also to stop the rotation, because there may be a case where you may be just rotating, you're like, you know what, now I want to actually pause it, bring up the .ui, and begin making fine adjustments. And so some things have been done to definitely make that feel a little more fluid as well.